Now I'm very pleased to welcome back one of the very best golf handicappers that I know, and Mr. Brady Kannon from Sports Grid and CBS Sports. You can follow Brady on X at Las Vegas Golfer. And just like that, the Masters is here. We're just watching the championship game of the NCAA, and no chance to breathe in this industry.
Good to be with you, Kiev. Thank you so much for having me. I wrote an article for golf.com, and I remember 25 days ago, and I said, roughly 25 days from now, or over the course of the next 25 days, we'll be watching a lot of March Madness college basketball, and then bang, we roll right into the Masters. It's really a absolutely wonderful 30-day stretch. People talk about like when the World Series is being played at the same time as NFL football. I don't know if there's anything better than March Madness and the Masters. Pretty good little run here we're on.
God, it's so funny. We say this during the year, like, college playoffs, NFL, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, this is really good. But this is really good. I don't know. I love this because spring in the air is different.
Yes.
It's that uplifting feeling. Winter's ending. You got the beautiful weather. You got the beautiful flowers blooming. It's just a time for relaxation and summer. What's around the corner. So the feeling, I can't disagree with you, man. But speaking of feelings, I always want to feel out how Live Golf is living up to the PGA Tour, and I've asked you guys this, over the years. And what has there been any changes since last year, between these tours, and is anyone gaining some ground?
I don't think there's really been much change since the big move at the beginning of the year when Brooks Koepka left the Live circuit, and was given a path to return to the PGA Tour, which obviously he is on currently, and he'll be at the Masters. He would have been at the Masters regardless, but obviously he's playing in PGA Tour events, and he's suffered some punishment there, which, I think the PGA Tour and their new commissioner did a fantastic job in ushering him back in quickly. And I also thought the penalties were very fair. He gave back a lot of money that he basically made when he signed with Live. So, I think it works out. And again, this new commissioner, I thought he did a great job. And now Patrick Reed, who will also be at the Masters and will for as long as he can still play because he's a former winner. But now he has left the Live circuit as well. He is expected to return to the PGA Tour in the fall. He's currently playing on the DP World Tour. Those are obviously a couple of very big moves that have happened recently. And Kiev, it feels to me like, first of all, I don't think the PGA Tour cares about a whole lot more guys than Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm, Tyrrell Hatton, and maybe Joaquin Niemann. And I'm not so sure if anybody else really matters. I think Rahm and Hatton could be the next dominoes to fall. Probably wouldn't happen until next year, but it feels to me like it's coming. And I don't necessarily want to see the Live circuit go away, because I think, hey, the more golf, the better, right? First of all. But it also feels like a good place for some of these older guys like Dustin Johnson and Lee Westwood and Graham McDowell. It's almost like a stop in between the PGA Tour and the Champions Tour, right? When you're on the back nine of your career, but you're not quite ready to hang it up or something like that, why not go get a bag of money and play on the Live circuit? So I don't want to see it go away, but there are a couple, 3-4 guys I'd like to see come back to the PGA Tour as well.
And obviously Lefty too. It's crazy because they were making more money than the PGA Tour. I don't know how much of a pay cut Koepka is going to take here by giving money back, but these guys were given some pretty big bags, and it sounds like Liv's going to take a hit. I almost kind of want to see Liv as a preliminary type like a AAA division for the PGA, if that's the case, because I don't want it to go away either. Maybe you can use it for some of the very young or some of the very old, but the money has to go away at some point, because I don't see how they can make money at this format.
No, I really don't either. Their TV deals have gotten better. It's easier to find on TV, but still very few people are watching it. And, outside of the 3 or 4 names that I mentioned, why would you want to tune in anyway? I mean, do you want to tune in to see Peter Uihlein and Sam Horsfield? And, Anthony Kim was a great story. Anthony Kim was an up and coming absolute superstar in the PGA Tour before he went through some real struggles in life, including a lot of injuries. That's really what took him away from the PGA Tour to begin with. But it just doesn't have the draw. It feels like the PGA Tour absolutely has the upper hand right now, where maybe it didn't a year ago or so. But with Koepka and Reed coming back, it feels like the writing's on the wall. Like these guys have realized, you know what, maybe I made the wrong move there, and I want to go back home.
Yeah, I think one of them even used the same excuse he left to come back home, if I can.
Yes, that was
remember.
Patrick Reed. He wanted to spend more time with family. Now he's coming back because he wants to spend more time with family.
Okay. I should check his notes. Oh my God. It's so, yeah, it just cutting through that. It's like, come on, dude, you took a bag. Let's just be honest. I mean, I'd rather just like have people be honest, and I'd respect that. No, man, they pay me a lot of money. What would you do in your job?
The one guy that I think has been, and this is not surprising, probably the most brutally honest guy throughout this entire thing is Dustin Johnson, who I just love his demeanor and his attitude. It's like, oh shucks, who cares? And Mickelson and a lot of these guys were doing this to grow the game. Bull crap. Johnson basically came out there and said, hey, the money's pretty nice. And he's got a US Open and a Masters. And he was, starting to kind of get towards the end of certainly the end of his prime. And, it's kind of a perfect deal for him. He collected a bunch of money. He's playing golf, whatever. He'll be in the field this week at Augusta. Of course, he's got a green jacket. It's kind of a perfect little retirement package for him. And he was honest about it. But anyway, I've always been a fan of the PGA Tour, was never really a fan of LIV. Actually won a few bets on LIV, not this year, but the year, or maybe year before. I don't know what it was. I hit a few outrights last year or the year before. We were covering it a lot on Sports Grid, and I was getting into handicapping it and everything. But still, to this day, Kiev, I don't know if I've watched more than half a dozen holes of LIV golf coverage.
Yeah, I mean, so, you become a fan if you make money. Yeah,
right. And you kind of want to tune in and watch or whatever, but it just doesn't have the pizzazz for me. It doesn't have the draw. Right. It's just it's a weird product, and this is another thing that I have always felt, and I still feel is true. Of course, the former CEO. Part of the creator of LIV, Greg Norman, used to be one of my favorite players in the world when he was, number one in the world for years. And Norman came so close, it's appropriate that we're talking about it, came so close to winning the Masters on multiple occasions. I think if he would have won the Masters, there never would have been a LIV. It feels to me like Greg Norman was always trying to do something to kind of fill that void. If he had a green jacket and could come back to Augusta every year, I'm not sure this ever would have crossed his mind.
Well, that's so interesting. And I guess there's good and bad. The bad is, I guess, man, it's just so hard to overtake a true monopoly. And, they tried to do that. And what you look for is maybe things becoming better for everybody when that happens. But, it's our hearts are set on it. That, I mean, let's face it, if you're watching a league for your whole life, or you're a fan of the Chicago Bears or the Dallas Cowboys or whatever, it's hard for you to switch to the Dallas
Roughnecks, the XFL and the USFL. It's similar.
Yeah. And so that's definitely something to be considered, but we can talk about this forever, man. This is the Masters, and we got to get into this a little bit of the course information would be great. We say it every year, but maybe are they any difference in pin placements or tee boxes or anything?
Well, many years ago, probably in the neighborhood of 25 years ago, a major, not remodel, but, a major tweak to the golf course was done, if you will. And that was what they called at the time Tiger proofing, because Tiger came out here, I think it was 1997, and just blew the doors off the place. And so they go, hey, wait a minute, we got to do something here. And so they made it longer and did some stuff here and there. Since then, there have been more changes just to kind of keep up with the modern game, really just adding length, really. Maybe narrowing the fairways, pinching them in a little bit. The first and second cut, there used to be no rough at Augusta. I think they've given it a little bit of, I don't want to say it's penal, but it's not exactly like the fairway where maybe it used to be either. So there have been some changes to try and just kind of keep it in touch with today's game. And now here in 2026, I believe the actual yardage is 7,565 yards. And I believe that's maybe just 50 to 100 yards longer than it was the last time. So again, just a small little addition here and there. But really the same formula holds true. When they did do the tiger proofing many years ago, that kind of switched the landscape a little bit, where strokes gained approach, the iron play, really became paramount. It used to be just kind of a big boy hitter's golf course and be a great putter. And that is still a tremendous formula. Hit the ball a long way and have a magical short game. That'll take you a long way no matter where you play. But Augusta, with the changes, has also become very much about a second shot golf course. The iron play, the approach, the greens in regulation, hitting the proper quadrant of the green, because how these things are undulated and they're so fast. And if you hit the wrong spot on the green, you could end up 100 yards off the green. So, that part of the game, I think, is probably first and foremost is the most important skill set. And then it's the work on and around the greens, the scrambling and, those shaved runoff areas where you're having to get incredibly creative and get up and down to save par. I would say that's probably the second most important area. And then it's the work off the tee. You do have to be long. Driving distance trumps accuracy this week, but you still have to find the right spots in the fairways, because a lot of them are tilted a certain direction, and that might be tilted one way when you're trying to hit a shot the other way. And so, you can't just grip it and rip it and move on to the next shot. Obviously, there are proper positions to be in, but the emphasis on accuracy off the tee is not as great around here as it might be next week, for instance, at Harbor Town, where we have a totally different golf course.
Perfect segue into the next question. What's the key statistics you look for? It almost sounds like strokes gained tee to green.
Yeah.
I'll just admit that I was looking at something with that Colin Morikawa is the top with an approach to green. And I thought that, his 35-1 on FanDuel Sports right here wasn't the worst bet in the world. I threw something at it. I'm not stopping here. I'm listening to see what you have to say, and I'm going to fire on some more fun stuff. But am I approaching this right?
Yeah, right. No pun intended. Approach, strokes gained approach. Again, I think that's probably where you have to start. And right at the top of that list is Colin Morikawa. I'm on him too. I bet him back in February after he'd won at Pebble Beach and was contending at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I said, okay, it's time. And I got him at 30-1. And now, because of speculation about his back injury, he had to pull out after one hole of action at the Players Championship and hasn't played since. And he's saying he's day to day and this and that and the other. I really hope he's going to be okay. I felt he was going to be okay. It never looked like that serious of an injury. And with a month left to recover here, I figured he was going to be fine. I think 35 or 40-1 on Colin Morikawa is an incredible number. Again, you just have to cross your fingers that he's going to be 100%. He has been hitting balls. He did a practice round. Apparently, most of the practice he did on the course was just putting and chipping. We're finding out more about Colin Morikawa's health by the hour. But again, my fingers are crossed because he does check. I mean, he's maybe playing the best golf he has in his career. He seems to be back. He got into the winner's circle, which had eluded him for a couple of years. And like you say, tops at strokes gained approach, the driving accuracy. He's doing everything at a very high level. And, whether he wins or not and we cash a ticket or not, I just hope he is 100% because I think he's absolutely in the mix this year.
Yeah, I mean that price right there on him was just screaming at me, and I knew there was a
If he
little.
was healthy, Kiev, he'd be
Yeah,
18-1,
yeah,
or
I
15
think
or
so.
something. So
I think so too, and that's what we're just kind of hoping for. But let's look at the favorites here. We got, of course, Scotty and top plus 550, 5.5 to 1. It's funny. That's actually a little bit better odds for us, worse for him winning it than we've had in the past with Scotty the last few years, as he's just been the dominant golfer in the whole world. Yeah, Bryson DeChambeau at 10 to 1, John Rahm at 10 to 1. Those two guys kind of coming off that live circuit. Rory, who won it last year, who was a great bet after the first round at 13 to 1. His number was worse last year. It was more like 8 or 9 to 1. Schauffele, 15 to 1. Ludwig Aberg, 18 to 1. And Matt Fitzpatrick and Cam Young, 20 to 1. What do you think about these favorites? Are they properly priced? Is there anyone you like in that number?
yeah, I'd say for the most part, they're pretty well priced. I'm not going to jump on Scotty Scheffler or Rory McIlroy this year. And that's dangerous to not jump on Scotty because he could jump on a victory, in a moment's notice. But obviously, he
Yeah.
just welcomed his second child into the world. He's
Ooh.
had to avoid a couple of weeks on tour because of the birth of the child, and and his game hasn't been 100% either. He won at the American Express earlier this year, but in in related to standard Scotty, he's been struggling. He's finishing 20th instead of second or something, right? So it just hasn't been the usual Scotty Scheffler that we've become accustomed to in the last 2-3 seasons. I've seen his price as high as 6 to 1. Rory, he was coming off of a nagging back issue as well. I believe it was at Bay Hill where he had to withdraw. And defending champions typically don't win. That has not happened since Tiger, in 2002. So he's got that working against him. Now you start to dive down the list with everybody else: Rahm, DeChambeau, Schauffele, Morikawa, Oberg, Cam Young. Any of those guys have a shot, I believe, Kiev. And I was talking about this on a show earlier. There's only 91 players in the Masters field. Okay. And you've got a handful of those that are amateurs. You've got a handful of those that are seniors. You've got a number of these guys that are debutantes, first timers. A first timer hasn't won here since 1979. You need experience to figure this place out. So, pretty soon you're down to about 35 guys that can win this event. And most of them are at the top of the odds board. It's typically a very chalky event. You don't get triple digit long shots typically that are winning here. So, you look at that odds board starting with Scotty and you drop down to maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 1, and your winner's probably somewhere in that window.
Yeah, it sure is a tight group since 1979. That is a long time before somebody, a first timer, has won this. And I see it being the same thing every single year here. So I agree with you. How do you like any long shots? And when I say long shots, it could be 40 to 1, being that this is the Masters, something like that. Anybody that you like that hasn't been talked about enough?
Well, I think this guy is getting mentioned, and that's Adam Scott, a former champion in 2013. A big part of Augusta and the handicap is course history and course form. Guys that tend to play well here tend to do so year in and year out. And Adam Scott's a perfect example. He won it in 2013. He missed the cut last year. That's the first time he's missed the cut at Augusta since 2010. So he's just a model of consistency because he knows the course. He knows how to play it. And it typically takes Kiev guys 6 times playing the Masters before they win. So that's how much experience you need to gain here before you can crack the code and at least have a small window into figuring this place out. This will be Adam Scott's 25th time playing the Masters, and he's having a wonderful season on tour this year. Finished 4th at Riviera, which is an incredibly correlated course to Augusta. We see a number of the same people winning at both Riviera and at Augusta National. He finished 11th this year at Bay Hill, where, by the way, at 45 years old, he was 5th in that field for driving distance. The guy is still banging it off the tee. He's third on tour in strokes gained approach. He's playing beautifully. And if you recall last year at Oakmont, which most people feel is the hardest golf course in the world, heading into Sunday, he was in second place. So he is playing really good golf. And again, because he knows this place so well, has won here before. Now you're going to find him right now anywhere in the neighborhood of say 60 to 80 to 1. Maybe you can even find a 90. I got him back at the end of February at 125 to 1. And I said, that price is too high. I think his real price ought to be about 80 to 1. So he's certainly a long shot, but I think he's a long shot that has a shot.
75 to 1 here on our friends at FanDuel. So there you have it. That's a great case that you made. Played the amount of times, former champions, driving really well, second through Saturday in a recent event. I love it. That is fantastic. So how are you constructing your ticket for this wonderful event?
Well, I actually, and this is not uncommon for me, I typically start betting on people to win the Masters in January or February because there's a lot of indicators early on in the season along the West Coast swing. I mentioned Riviera, where they play the Genesis Invitational. If you look at all of the guys that have won both the Masters and the Genesis Invitational, it's an extensive list. Fred Couples, Nick Faldo, Phil Mickelson, Adam Scott twice, Bubba Watson twice, Dustin Johnson, Craig Stadler, Tom Watson. I mean, Ben Hogan. It's an incredible list. I would say it's the strongest list of crossover success of any tournament, any two golf courses that exists. Ooh. So that's one. And then, oftentimes guys that win the Masters have a win to their credit before they get there. So, you look at who's won this season. Colin Morikawa, we talked about at Pebble Beach, Justin Rose at Torrey Pines. And so, you just, and then another extremely strong correlated course is Kapalua, the plantation course in Maui. Now they skipped that this year, unfortunately, but like last year, who won it? Hideki Matsuyama, who, oh, by the way, is a Masters champion. Who's won it in the past? Jon Rahm, Patrick Reed, Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, Zach Johnson. I mean, again, the connection between Masters winners and Kapalua is extremely strong. So I start looking at making Masters bets quite early. I mentioned Adam Scott. Min-Woo Lee is another bet that I have, who won the Houston Open last year and just finished third there this year. He was runner-up at Pebble Beach, 6th at Bay Hill, and 12th at Riviera. So not only doing well on the correlated courses, but the form is excellent. Patrick Reed, a former winner, 4 top 10 finishes since his win in 2018 at the Masters. We talk about guys that play well here, tend to do so year in and year out. Perfect example right there. And he was off to, we talked about him coming off of the live circuit. In a matter of 3 weeks between January and February on the DP World Tour, he won twice and finished runner-up once. So, I mean, he was absolutely scorching hot at the beginning of the year, and that's what I bet him. He's at 46 to 1. You can find about that same price now. He dipped all the way down to like as low as 25, but now he's closer to 35 or 40 or better. So those were the longer shots: Reed, Min-Woo Lee, and Adam Scott.
And I see Koepka at 45 to 1 too, which is, I'm curious why that number is so big on him.
I just don't know if he's ready yet, Kiev. The switch from the live to the PGA. He had a very good finish at the Players Championship. I think he finished 13th. And I actually jumped on him like the next week, if I recall. I thought maybe he was ready. But now we're talking a bit about a different kind of ready. And now he was right there a few years ago. I think it was 2023 when he finished second to Jon Rahm. Yeah. Maybe a look at Koepka in June for Shinnecock, where he's won the U.S. Open before. We'll be back this year at Shinnecock. Or maybe you look at the PGA, where he's won 3 of them already. So, but I'm just not ready to go there with Augusta yet. Maybe next year, if the guy continues, because he's been playing well, if he continues along that path, then yeah, you can never count him out.
Any fades for matchups that you have real quick?
Tyrrell Hatton. And I believe he's become a popular answer on who people are fading this week. I put it out on CBS Sportsline a couple weeks ago, and I put it out on Sportsline when his odds were 40-1. I think on FanDuel he's now like 100-1. So a lot of people are really dodging Tyrrell Hatton, and it's kind of interesting because his last 2 trips to the Masters have been his best 2 finishes. But this year on Live, he's been all over the place, really feast or famine. He's had a couple of top 10 finishes, and then he's almost also finished dead last. And in the statistics, he's not very good either. So, and the other thing, Kiev, kind of the overarching answer to this question, I don't think Tyrrell Hatton really, no matter what he's doing currently, has the best game suited for Augusta National. If he's going to win a major, I believe it's probably going to be one of the other 3.
Makes total sense. I see him against Shane Lowry here. I will definitely be considering that. And what you guys should consider is following at Las Vegas golfer, Mr. Brady Kannon. Brady, could you let our listeners know where they can get your wonderful information?
Yeah, everything that I do is pretty much put up on my Twitter feed at Las Vegas Golfer. But as far as the specific sites, platforms, what have you, golf.com. I believe my article is up there now with all my outrights. CBS Sportsline, sportsline.com. You can find all of my information up there. And then, of course, Sports Grid. You know, I'm on hosting shows on the weekends and guest appearances throughout the week. So that's about it, my friend. You know, I'm just about everywhere. It's hard to miss me, Kiev.
It's hard to miss this man, and we don't ever want to miss him. Thanks again, Brady. Enjoy the Masters, and best of luck with your plays.
Thanks for having me, my friend.